So my name is Akshay Sura. I've been MVP for quite a bit of time. I lead quite a few of the Sitecore community efforts, and I just like making friends.
And I'm Kamruz, Jaman, also a Sitecore MVP for a long time. I've been around in the community. We presented at this year's group a few times, and good to see some familiar faces again.
So this is basically the agenda of everything we're going to be going through. We don't need to see that. We'll probably go through it anyways.
So a little bit about us and our composable journey. A lot of you obviously know us from the Sitecore world, and you probably noticed around 4.5, 5 years ago almost now, we started to talk more about composable. And we were looking for different ways of trying to solve some solutions for customers of ours who were not at Sitecore scale. So they needed different ways to solve this content management problem that they were having. We have tried to share a lot during our journey and how we're doing things, why we're doing things, why we think certain things are working in a specific way. And along our journey, it's probably gone from 20 to about 30 in the last few months. We've moved about 30 different websites across from the traditional monolithic platforms across to headless and composable architectures and implementations. And we currently have 6 current MVPs and 10 Sitecore MVPs in our team. So we obviously have a lot of Sitecore experience, which actually did help a lot on this composable journey.
Cool. So what we wanted to do is kind of like walk you through a customer journey of where a customer is in terms of their journey of being on XP. Now they're thinking about composable. We learned quite a bit. So we have a couple of customers in the manufacturing sector, and they had similar problems, right? They were on XP, they had infrastructure. Upgrades was a pain. The cost of infrastructure was a pain. They wanted to get to composable because they keep hearing it. Their marketers keep hearing it, that it'll solve all the problems. It's a magic pill. You take the pill and tomorrow morning you wake up with a composable site. So we kind of looked at it from a pain point perspective to figure out how we would walk them through. And we wanted to look at it a little bit differently in terms of looking at their pain points and trying to figure out how they would walk through this process and get to a composable future. So what were they looking for, right? They were looking for the same things all the customers look for, everyone looks for, which is, I don't want to deal with headaches with upgrades. I want it to be seamless. I want the site to be fast. By being fast, it would be better for SEO rankings. They need to be able to integrate with other systems easily. They don't want to pay so much for the infrastructure costs. They need things to turn on a dime. So like if a new functionality comes in, they don't want to wait for it to become another project and take forever to finish. They want to be able to do it quick. And they want to be able to utilize it in more than one channel and not just the web channel. That was the wish for these 2 customers that we dealt with. So
what we've found is we're technologists, right? We're solution architects. We design solutions. We like to write code. But what we found with the composable approach is don't go anywhere near code, don't go anywhere near a solution. Start with road mapping. Stay completely technology agnostic. Don't be looking at what product can I use to implement this with. Identify the actual problem areas that they're having, and then work on from that. Find duplication in what they're doing as well. Reduce the duplication. We have found a lot of customers will use multiple systems because that's the only way that they could use to do the same thing, because that's the only way they could have the implementation that they wanted to. So they would have a dam somewhere out there, which they would use for all their internal creatives and then all their internal processes. That would then get pushed out to some other bucket, and then they'd have some SIG process running, which would then bring that into the Sitecore media library, which would then push it out, and then maybe they'd have a content delivery network on top of that. That's a lot of duplication for something that's already in what your end goal would be, which is a digital asset management system. Same for we found a lot. Same for a lot of products with PIMs and e-commerce. And again, a lot of the similar kind of things happening with customer data as well. You're just shuffling data from one system into another system because that's how these systems are designed to work. They don't care about external systems; they only care about their own internal systems. So you're pushing a lot of data around, which causes a lot of duplication, and it causes a lot more work and a lot more complexity within those projects. All of this, of course, is all well and good from a technology point of view and a process point of view, but it does require buy-in. And this is the easiest thing to talk about, buy-in from the top, and everybody thinks they have buy-in from the top. But when there's big changes in process, it really does need to work top to bottom, not just being told top down or being asked bottom up. It requires equal partnership across the entire organization. It is a business change, process change, and that is always hard. That is often harder than the actual technological changes because you're dealing with people, you're dealing with humans, you're dealing with how people are used to doing things, and change is complex. So getting that buy-in, getting the education in there, what will composable mean for me? What will it mean for my job? How will it make my life easier? How will it make my life better? How will I be doing things in the future that I'm doing differently from now? Oftentimes that business architecture change, that business process change, people will take that and see the simplicity of the composable approach and how it reduces that duplication, that the buy-in is almost instantaneous. They were like, oh, wow, you mean I don't have to copy this from here to there and then make this manipulation to get this into the final system, and I can just pull it directly. Oh wow, okay, that's just going to save me 10 hours a week that I can actually use on some other part of my day-to-day work, which I've been neglecting.
So, I mean, we've seen this so many times. I think I want to break the screen when I see it every single time, but we all know what a composability is, right? So we just basically, unlike a monolithic system, we just want to pick and choose what we want, and we want to put them together when we need it, as we need it, rather than being given to us. So as you know, Gartner recommends the adoption for composable. If Gartner is recommending it, all of these big customers and clients, they follow Gartner and Forrester and the path they set forward. So it's a good thing to keep in mind.
So let's talk about Sitecore XP. This is obviously what we have all grown up with, and it's a traditional CMS, an all-in-one DXP, digital experience platform. And there is obviously a lot of powerful features in there. Right? The personalization pieces are industry leading. It's when you get those Sitecore demos, it's awe-inspiring. They have built-in capabilities for forms, analytics tracking. There's path analyzers. There's email campaign managers. There's a lot of features which are built all in this single platform, but it traditionally has been this self-hosted piece of software. You are responsible for the entire platform, all the infrastructure, all the upgrades, all the hosting, all the security, the scaling. Implementation has also been a little bit tricky at times. It hasn't always been straightforward, and the projects you work on, depending on how they've been implemented, of course, can either be very easy to work with or extremely difficult because of multiple vendors and different levels of experience. So there is a lot of power that comes with this, but obviously with a lot of power comes a lot of additional overhead and a lot of additional responsibilities that you need to take.
So what is XM Cloud, right? I think I was having a conversation with someone the other day and talking about Content Hub 1 and XM Cloud, and there still seems to be some confusion. So the way Sitecore puts it is it's a fully composable SaaS-based CMS, right? You don't have to do anything. It is a fully managed service, so you shouldn't really care how the upgrades are done. You shouldn't really care where it's hosted. You shouldn't really care about infrastructure because it's not your problem to worry about from that perspective. But it does give you an option to transition from your XP. It is the direct path from XP to XM Cloud. The Content Hub 1 doesn't come into play for that moment. If you do want to go composable, it does have a little bit of personalize in it. It's not the full version of Sitecore Personalize. It pushes out everything to Sitecore Experience Edge. So it's on the Edge network. If you have a disconnected system like Next.js or React or Angular, you could pull from the GraphQL endpoint and do whatever you need to. And you can use it in whichever channel you need to. So it kind of solves the problem going that way. It isn't classed as a true headless. There's a very simple reason for that. A true headless is omni-channel, and it doesn't care how a piece of content would look. The way Sitecore is looking at it is Content Hub 1 is a true headless system because it doesn't care how it looks. XM Cloud, on the other hand, we do care how content looks because then we have the experience editor, which we're calling Pages now, but Pages, which will let you compose the pages. We have a concept of a component, internal as well as external component. So there's a visual aspect to it. And because of that, they try to package it a slightly different way.
Yeah, it's probably the most familiar platform in the headless space for us, especially for us traditional Sitecore developers and users. If you go into XM Cloud and you log into it and then you go into the content tree, it's going to be very familiar for you, and you're going to feel right at home straight away. You're not going to feel, whereas if you went into some of the other content, headless content systems, you'd be like, how does this one work compared to what I'm used to? But with that, headless and SaaS it's not always going to be for everybody, right? Different software solutions are always going to work for different companies. The traditional platforms will still have their place. Those monolithic all-in-one still have their place. If there is a business requirement, for example, to self-host, maybe you're in an industry where there's a lot of restrictions in place, there's a lot of legal overhead that you need to take care of. You need the country, your data to be in a specific data center, in a specific region, and Sitecore maybe isn't providing it in that region at the moment. Those requirements to self-host are going to be important. You probably don't, if you don't care about scaling. Not everybody is a global multinational corporation that cares about scaling. We've worked with some companies who are a very regional hospital vendor, for example, a healthcare vendor. They only care about that one specific region in the US because that's where their customer base is. They don't even care about the rest of the US, let alone the rest of the world. Scaling is not an issue. If you have a team which is handles everything, one team that handles everything, a very small team, they'll handle the front end, the back end, maybe the hosting, they do the marketing integration pieces, they will be analyzing the analytics data, then maybe that traditional platform is going to be better for you. With a composable system, you're going to have lots of different systems, and they will have to reach out to lots of different systems in order to get all the information that they will need in that case. And with that, of course, it's a single integrated tool. As it's mentioned, everything is in one place. It's under one umbrella. You can just need to go into that one single system. And sometimes those businesses are willing to adapt their requirements to fit the specific features of the platform. Maybe because you just don't have those processes in place, so you just need something to adopt, and it's easier for you to adopt an established process, an established system, than trying to figure out what you actually need at this particular moment in time. And of course, there are lots and lots of customers who are extremely happy with their existing platform choice, and moving off it is just not on their roadmap at this particular point in time because it's not causing them pain points. But composable, if you are if you do have a need to have a highly scalable and global solution, maybe you are a multinational corporation with presence literally around every single country in the globe, then composable is obviously a highly recommended solution, especially with XM Cloud and Experience Edge. You want to remove the burdens of hosting and upgrades. Again, as Akshay mentioned, it's all taken care of. Maybe you already have a well-established marketing stack within your organization, and you don't want to use email campaign manager, and you don't want to use the analytics tools in Sitecore, or you have other personalization tools that you're using and that integrate with your own CDP, then Composable is an extremely good choice because that allows you to pick the stack that you want to work with. A lot of these composable systems are best of breed, and they all do one thing really well. And if you have differing business needs and issues to solve, that those all-in-one platforms, you have to change your business to meet the all-in-one platforms. At this point, you can pick the exact product for the exact business department for the exact business need you have at that exact moment in time. And of course, you get a lot of freedom from the technology and the vendor. So you're not tied to a specific composable system, you're not tied to a specific technology stack, and you're not tied to a specific vendor. And that works in two ways: the vendor for the platforms and also the vendor from the agency side as well. Being on the composable stack opens up your options on who you can work with and partner with.
All right. So what are the paths of getting out of XP, right? Migration is quite a hot topic. Everyone has an opinion on it, but to be quite honest, with the ones we've seen so far, the best answer we can give you is it's complicated. It's complicated because it depends on your install. It depends on how much customizations you've done. It depends on if you've used MVC or JSS, or if you use SXA. Depends on the version you're working on. Depends on if you use personalization, if you use experience editor, how heavily customized your experience editor is, your analytics, right? So the answer is never easy, but we do know that if you are on JSS, it's the quickest path for you to get to XM Cloud.
Especially if you're on JSS with XM. The simplest one. But yeah, so first thing to do, of course, is to take stock of what features you're actually using. What part of the platform in Sitecore are you currently actively using and making use of? We've all worked on a lot of projects where people have bought Sitecore XP because of all the wonderful features that are built into it. And majority of the times, they're just using the core CMS to build websites. There's very little, if any, personalization. Nobody's really keeping track of the analytics. Everyone's just using Google Analytics. They might not be using EXM, especially with the personalization features. If you're just using EXM, again, you're not using EXM to its full capabilities because it's supposed to tie in with the personalization features. So figure out what you're actually using. Cut out as much as you can, especially cut out all the analytics and those related roles. For the first step, keep all the basic features like Sitecore Forms. Forms doesn't work in the composable sense, but it will work when you move from Sitecore XP to Sitecore XM. Your core platform and the core website will continue to work. Your MVC code will continue to work. Things like forms will continue to work. The search features will continue to work. That will make your solution a lot simpler. It will make your infrastructure a lot less complicated. And at the same time, it will also reduce your costs. And then you can slowly start to get towards composability in a small step. And if you can, start to use a content delivery network. That's going to really help you. It will start to get you. It'll start to get you towards more of a composable stack and to think more composable. The second step is to move towards headless delivery. So you're now going to have to go through a little bit more pain because you're going to have to go onto a different technology set. So you're going to have to move towards headless content delivery, and that will mean getting off MVC and getting onto JSS. If you're going onto JSS, we're going to recommend, or headless, should I say, headless services. We're going to recommend using Next.js. It's our preferred framework, and the SDK provided from Sitecore works really, really well. And of course, Sitecore has mentioned their partnership with the Sal. Sorry, 1 second. You can obviously use any other front-end framework that you like. Sitecore with JSS has traditionally had support for React. They had support for Vue for a little while in Angular. I think they've fallen out of flavor a bit. I've seen examples of Svelte and things like that as well. And of course, you have the .NET Core rendering hooks. Especially for us who've been in the Sitecore world for a long time, that is our traditional platform that we use. We would have been using that .NET Core-based framework. So that is still available to you, but I still even as a .NET developer, I'm still going to recommend Next.js because there are, you've probably seen a lot of the talk around the industry and things like that with Next.js. It is the framework of flavor, especially with composability and the Jamstack type approach. There's a lot of benefits to it in terms of scaling, builds, deployments, and just being able to work with it, and hosting costs was the other big thing on that one. While you're doing this, while you're doing this, obviously future-proof your tech stack. When you have systems like EXM and things like that, move more towards those other headless services like Sitecore Send, Google Analytics, HubSpot for Forms, Sitecore Personalize, or some other personalization stack. If you're using those, if you're not using those, haven't been using those, just move the tech stack and think about those other things when you will actually need them. And again, just move towards composability one step at a time as much as you can. Getting off of MVC onto the headless and JSS type of stack.
So once you get there, you're almost there. So all you have to do is you have to serialize everything that you have, content templates, right? Push that over to the XM cloud, depending on how you have it set up. So now that you're already using the Experience Edge with JSS, it's just a matter of pointing to a different endpoint because the endpoint would be different for your XM Cloud instance. And technically, pretty much everything should be working the way it's supposed to because the content matches, the templates match, the Experience Edge endpoint matches, the layout inside of the Experience Edge endpoint will have what your JSS app needs. So you should be pretty set. From that moment on, I think the biggest thing which you get out of it is, from a composability perspective, you just only add things when you need things. If you need an analytic provider, find someone. If you need personalized and you're not happy with what you get and you use something else, use it. So from that perspective, you only add features that you need, composable products that you need, and you don't just overwhelm yourself with 15 different things that you don't need of. And again, like Kamruz said, look for technology shifts, right? So we're going through something right now where we had this perfect stack 2 years ago, works really well, doesn't give us any problem, but that doesn't mean you get complacent and just sit on it. You have to constantly look for improvements in certain things. Next.js itself has improved tremendously in the last 2 years. So we could use quite a bit of that to improve the efficiency of the process.
Yeah, and we just saw the announcement from Netlify that they've acquired Gatsby. And that's huge news, right? Netlify has been lagging a little bit. Gatsby's a great framework. So these two partnering now could see, again, one of these technological shifts. It doesn't mean that we're going to shift our current project to be using Gatsby, but maybe the next project we're working on would be using Gatsby, or maybe Blazor will finally deliver its full promise of what it's supposed to do, and we can start using Blazor for development for C# developers as well. But while you're at this step, we can obviously, at this point, we can also start to remove all of our customizations from Sitecore. Again, simplify your stack. If you're on XM Cloud, you want to keep it as close to stock Sitecore XM Cloud as you can. That will then remove the headache of those upgrades, because then that's going to be Sitecore's problem. As soon as you start to add customizations in, you start to get back into the cycle of potentially breaking your upgrade path. Because XM Cloud, unlike other headless vendors, will allow you to make some customizations, but it's not recommended. If you want to make customizations, what you should be doing is following the composable route of using the webhooks and the APIs, and then using Azure Functions or something like that to actually carry out that task and then report back via those APIs. If you do that, then that will give you a much better outlook going forward.
Cool. Now we just wanted to quickly go over certain common things that we need to replace and what you would replace them using. So analytics, right? So unless someone on this call tells me otherwise, most of the time, anytime you go in there, the companies are used to using Google Analytics. That's what the internal people use. The marketing group uses that. There are a couple of different options. One of them is self-hosted, and Google Analytics is getting better and better. GA4 is coming up July 1st. So to be quite honest, it doesn't make sense to use anything else. But if they do, you can integrate those as well. A lot of these analytics programs let you add a script onto the page, and that's pretty much it. You don't really need to do anything more than that.
And forms is another thing that you need to tackle because of the nature of composable and that Jamstack philosophy. There's no postbacks like you do with traditional MVC applications. So you need a headless-based form solution. We use HubSpot ourselves, but I've previously used Marketo and Acton. So obviously it has a lot of benefits around GDPR, CCPA, because you're not holding that data. It's in HubSpot's environment and infrastructure, and these forms in turn can integrate with CRM in the background, so you don't have to then write additional code to push that into a CRM and have follow-ups and things like that.
Wow, the dog screamed. Sitecore search again is a really good question. A lot of people ask us, how exactly do you replace search? And once you go into the composable space, you have a lot of options, to be quite honest. In some of our projects, we use Elastic quite a bit, search stacks as well. Once you go composable, it's a matter of, you have two methodologies. One is you index what you want. So like what we do is, if it's product-based or that kind of information, we push index documents specific to the products. But then we also have a secondary index, which is scraped index or crawled index based on the website. So you could do both or single, or either way is fine. But in the composable space, there are several options, and it actually becomes very easy to integrate. It's just a matter of preference and price.
Personalization. This is a big one that everybody had bought Sitecore in the first place for. And of course, Sitecore has a couple of personalization offerings in Sitecore Personalize and all the data backed with the CDP. Concierge is another one to watch out for. We've been working with them quite closely, and they've got a great product. I'm sure some of you also know of Sitecore Uniform as well. That integrates really well with the Sitecore, built by some ex-Sitecoreans. We did have Google Optimize on here, but we should probably remove that because they just announced that they're going to sunset it in true Google fashion, right? So it is a really good one to play with, though, because you can go create yourself your Google Analytics account and start to play and see how that personalization piece works. I've done this. This is the first thing that I had used about 3 or 4 years back, just to see how would a composable personalization look like. So you can still go in there, have a play with it. I highly recommend it, just to get yourself an idea of how does this personalization on another website work. Google Optimized for Business was extremely expensive, so it's probably why they killed it, because not many people could afford it.
And then we have DAM. Obviously, you have Sitecore Content Hub. My personal favorite is Cloudinary, but pretty much any DAM, Widen would do as well. A lot of these DAMs have image APIs, so you can manipulate the image on the fly, which is kind of cool. So depending on the URL you send, you could get a specific focus point, a specific size. You could manipulate the image whichever way you want. And yeah, we didn't really have any issues not having them in the media library once we moved over.
And I know how much everybody really loves EXM, and it's going to be hard to let it go. But for replacements, you can got the cowmail, as somebody called it the other day, Moosend, which is now Sitecore Send from Sitecore's own offerings. But you can use things like MailChimp. Constant Contact is another one that we've used for multiple projects as well.
And for commerce, again, any commerce vendor would do. There's a lot of good options for composable commerce. I know Sitecore Order Cloud is pretty well used as well, but there's BigCommerce, Commerce Tools, UCommerce, God knows commerce, every commerce is out there. So all of them are very composable. You could integrate them pretty easily with other systems, and integration is never an issue.
And they're so easy, even I understand how they work, which is saying a lot. So I think one of the big things is going to be the project execution and the management of this project. It is a big undertaking. Don't look at it as just another upgrade project. It's a big project. If you can plan this over a long period of time with lots of small steps along the way, that's going to make you much more successful. Treat it as a new project, as a new build. Treat it as a learning exercise as well, because there's going to be a lot of new things in here that you're going to have to learn. You're going to have to fall over. You're going to have to stumble. You're going to have to scrape your knees. You're going to have to scrape your elbows a little bit. We have done all of this, and we've burnt our fingers a few times. We've had to smack our head on the wall a few times as well as a result. But it's all a learning exercise, and reach out to the community, obviously, continue to use in Slack, continue to have those discussions, continue to share the knowledge, and then we'll all learn and we'll all grow with those mistakes and with those learnings.
All right. With that, questions?
Yeah, hi.
One, we didn't do that good of a job.
Hi, actually, just one question. This is Jaman. So, just to understand a little difference in Content Hub. No, sorry, not about the Content Hub. It's about XM Cloud and Content Hub 1. So we know that Content Hub 1 is a lightweight CMS, and XM Cloud is our traditional how we build the component. So let's say if I build our React component. So in XM Cloud, it's our regular content tree structure. We create one items and pages, and then we publish. Then it publish the data to Experience Edge. And on the other side, for Content Hub 1 also, it's a different model, actually, content modeling based. And we create items and publish that, also publish the data to Experience Edge. But if I create one component, that's a React component, so if I use either of one, is there any change in fetching or getting the data from two different systems, or I can use the same component, use the same APIs, content delivery APIs will provide me the same data.
So so pretty much everything you said is on target. The only problem is for Content Hub 1, there is no concept of a component. A concept of a component is what you say it is, which is an item, which is of one or more content types, right? And the difference is with XM Cloud, when it gets pushed, and if you use the JSS SDK on your Next.js, it's going to know the different components, the way they are laid out, the whole layout comes as part of your pull. Whereas on the Content Hub 1, there is no concept of a page, there is no concept of components, it's what you pull as part of it. So a page in the Content Hub 1 world is a content type page, and then you build it, and it's a little bit different. And you have no help on the front end side on Content Hub 1. It's you who's translating all of the content you get from the GraphQL endpoint and figuring out which one is there's a little bit of a disconnect there.
It's very template based, right? So the content I get from Content Hub 1 is just everything I put in a template. Whereas with XM Cloud, it's the traditional Sitecore model where I can go in, I have an item, I have some presentation, I add lots of components to them, I add lots of data sources to those components, and then what I get back is actually the data I get back from XM Cloud is all of that information. I get the page with all the components and the data source that goes with it. And then obviously the SDK will kind of push all of that together. You also don't have the concept of a content tree and hierarchy in Content Hub 1, which kind of makes it interesting, shall I say, a little bit more tricky. And a lot of headless CMSs have this same issue, by the way, right? It's not just a Content Hub 1 problem, so to speak, but that's how pure play headless CMSs work. They don't have a concept of a content tree because their rationale is there is no content tree, it's omni-channel, and you can use the data however you like. But that makes your content organization a bit trickier.
Okay, got it. So approach for both is different, how we're building the components.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. And one more question about moving to XM Cloud. Let's say, if I'm just taking an example of my project, sometimes we have some resource constraint and budget constraint. And because moving from XP to XM Cloud, a little bit a switch because we need resource who know the JSS or React development part. So still, like, just can we move to the regular rendering host, .NET rendering host component instead of going to the XM Cloud? If we take that route, like, what is the support just Sitecore providing long term, or it's good or not? If we just keep in the same momentum in XP.
Using the .NET Core rendering host.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it's supported, right?
And you want to stay back on XP or XM, or are you saying going to XM Cloud and using rendering host?
No, going to the stay back in the XP more.
Yeah, for right now, I don't think they're making any changes to that because they do see that there's a subset of customers who have restrictions either because of geo or because of government regulation. So for the foreseeable future, XP and XM will still live. So, and then as long as you're pushing to the experience edge, you could be using either JSS or the rendering host.
Yeah, you could be using PHP if you wanted to.
Yeah,
right? You just don't get the support, but the .NET rendering host will be fully supported, is our understanding.
Okay, got it. Yeah, thanks, Jamie. Thanks.
Yeah, I have a question. What is the path for migrating SXA-based sites?
That's the good question, right? So that's a hard one, to be quite honest. I know they released the SXA for Headless, but I haven't personally played with it myself. But
I've looked into it, and from my understanding, there's no direct migration path like we used to have. Like I was hoping there'd be like, just install the SXA package, and just like an SXA upgrade, you could go SXA headless, but unfortunately not. It is a different module almost, right? SXA headless is a different module. You don't have the same one-to-one mapping of the components and things like that. There's not as many components in SXA headless as there was in traditional SXA, which is kind of understandable because that's been built up over a long period of time. But then they also found that with traditional SXA, a lot of people were not using a lot of the components. So it didn't make sense to bring all of those across. Yeah, there isn't anything automatic, unfortunately. Hopefully somebody will release some good material on the path of least resistance in order to get into those, because the data you can move, but then you'll have to run Sitecore PowerShell scripts to move it from one template to the new sets of templates and map out that process.
Yeah, we had a nice segue into SXA, and then that's a big challenge I perceive. A lot of the current customers are struggling with that idea. Is to we did all this great development, and then what do we do now? Kind of.
Yeah. A lot of people are upset. Trust me.
The other one I had was what is the does Helix still is it still relevant in this XM Cloud world?
If you don't do customizations, it's not. So what Kamruz was saying, I thought we had a slide, I totally forgot, but we need to treat this as a service, right? Sitecore is being flexible in letting us customize. So obviously, none of the rendering pipelines won't make any difference right now because they're all lost. But any other customizations, you should try to use them as webhooks. And if you use webhooks, it's external to a Sitecore solution. Technically, your Sitecore solution should not have anything in it. It should be plain vanilla Sitecore. The only thing you're pushing up is serialized data in terms of your templates and your content, and that's pretty much it. So there is no solution to push up if there's no customization.
Yeah, you're mostly dealing with front ends at that point. Well, partially front end, and then obviously functions. Right? So you'll still have a lot of .NET code running for Azure functions and background processes and integrations that you're doing in the background.
Yet I see. I mean, I think it still calls for some kind of code organization, because that might ease the job of for teams to kind of follow each other's or between projects from one project to the other.
Absolutely, yeah. So I don't know if they call it the Helix or something Helix-like. Code organization is, and that's what Helix was trying to solve, right? The code organization, everyone working in the same kind of way. If you end up with multi-site solutions again, that leads to other issues, other concerns. You do need some common components, some common reusability. So those patterns are still relevant. I'm just not sure if they're called Helix, or the one we've been looking at is something called monorepo. So, but it's the same kind of concepts, the same kind of structures.
Thanks.